Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Salman bin Mahyuddin, and today my persuasive speech is going to be about maybe it's time to ditch Windows 11. Now, remember in 2015 when Microsoft just launched Windows 10, and they said that Windows is not dead, but the idea of version numbers could be, because they were talking about how Windows 10 would be the last Windows version, the last major update, and that from then on they'll just work on Windows 10 instead of trying to make the new next big Windows like Windows 11 and Windows 12, and they should just build upon Windows 10 because they wanted to make Windows as a service rather than a product. Well, that didn't happen because last year Windows 10 finally died. Yes, on 14 October 2025, Windows 10 entered the end of service. And now that no more support is available for the operating system, users are forced to migrate to Windows 11. So, is it worth trying to migrate to a new operating system? Well, it's still Windows, right? So, it can't be that bad. Well, truth be told, Windows hasn't been the best operating system there is out there, and for a number of reasons. Of course, this is debatable, but I think people should consider that there are other operating systems out there other than Windows, because we're so accustomed to it, and so people just do not even think about it. And so for today, I hope that when we take a look at the flaws that Windows has, maybe people will reconsider their options next time. So now, the first problem that we're going to look at is the bloatware and all the features that Windows has. Now, Windows 11 in particular, is their brand new system. Well, released in 2021, but it's still new. Has so much features and so much stuff that I do not want. Stuff that makes me think, why is this here and am I supposed to use it? Well, Microsoft wants me to use it, so I guess I should, but in reality, I don't really want to. So it's not a secret that Windows, even Windows 10 and before that, has a lot of bloatware. One of the tips that is frequently seen on the internet for people who have made a fresh Windows installation is to remove the bloatware. There are lots of guides and even command scripts to help them remove this bloatware. So what is bloatware anyway? Bloatware is basically pre-installed apps that you don't want or need on your computer. This is installed by Windows, or this is installed by the manufacturer of the product that you bought. And well, what you want and need is of course very subjective. Different people have different uses for the computer. But generally speaking, I don't think anyone really needs ads on their computers. The weather app, for example. I don't really need a weather app on my computer. I can just check the weather with the dedicated app somewhere else if I want to. But the fact that Microsoft pushes a lot of its software that I don't want to use on me is kind of annoying, So let's take a look at something closer to us. Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office suite is very well known. Lots of people use it, companies use it, it's pretty integrated. But for me, and for many students in my class, for example, they're looking at something here. We all mostly use the Google Docs suite, the Google environment, Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, and that kind of stuff. We don't really use Microsoft Word as much or Microsoft PowerPoint as much. So usually in slides we use Canva or in other presentation apps. But really, so this would I would consider Microsoft Office as bloatware. And there's lots of apps too, other than Microsoft Office, Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft OneDrive, and like Copilot. All of these are the stuff that I do not use and I do not want on my computer. And I, as a user, have to go through these one by one and remove them, which is something that is annoying, and I don't think Microsoft should have put them in the first place. It should be my choice as a user. If I want to use it, I will have to install it by myself. And speaking of Copilot, the Microsoft and a lot of tech companies nowadays have been pushing AI aggressively onto users. So in Microsoft's case, we have Copilot. Before Copilot, we had Cortana, and a lot of other AI-driven features on the Microsoft's applications. And I don't really want to use that, and I have my own reasons. So it may be because you hate generative AI and what it stands for, its implications on the environment, whatever. It's not the matter here. What matters here is I don't really want it, but Microsoft insists that I use it very much. So much so that if you try to use other generative AI chat, like ChatGPT or Perplexity AI, you type it on your browser because you want to use it, and suddenly there's a pop-up that says, "Oh, how about you try Copilot instead?" Like, shut up, Microsoft! I do not want to use Copilot. If I wanted to use it, I would be using it, but I don't. So don't recommend it to me. Then they actually removed the good features that Windows had. In my case, that I was shocked to know that got removed was the troubleshooting tool that Windows had before. So the troubleshooting tool is basically when you had problems on your system and you weren't sure what wasn't working, you would run the diagnostic tool and it would test out your system and try to find the problem so that you can fix it. Nowadays, if I have a problem and I wanted to try and solve it by myself, it shows me the Get Help page. The Get Help page is basically where you get help, and supposedly it's just a bunch of frequently asked questions, or you can just post on the make a ticket and can you please help me? My audio isn't working. Like, I should be able to just figure out what the problem is and have me try to fix it by myself. But so Microsoft isn't really doing a good job at making customers happy by giving what we want. Instead, they try to shove to us the things that they think or we should want. Next, we have privacy issues. Nowadays, privacy is a pretty hot topic, on the internet especially. People have tried to advise people to use VPNs or to encrypt your data or back it up somewhere secure, or use apps that have end-to-end encryptions for your messages, stuff like that. And that's good. But not many people talk about what's already on their computer, and that is Windows 11 or any Windows application really, because Microsoft has this thing that's called Windows Telemetry. So Windows Telemetry is basically where Windows periodically gives back to Microsoft some information about your system. Stuff like your location, your search queries, your app usage. And Microsoft says, oh, this is to help Microsoft make Windows a better app for everyone. Well, I'm all for making apps better for the end users, but I don't really see why my location or my search queries have anything to do with that. I don't see why you need to know where I am to make Windows a better operating system. So it really feels like Windows is spying on me. And speaking of spying, there's another AI-driven app that I also did not want. That is called Windows Recall. Now, Windows Recall is currently an opt-in app, meaning that you have to enable it yourself. And what it basically is, it periodically takes screenshots of your screen. So every few seconds, your computer just takes screenshots of whatever it is on your screen and saves it somewhere on your system. And so, according to Microsoft, this is for people who want to keep track of what we're doing because, I don't know, apparently they think we have goldfish memory. So basically, they think people keep forgetting what they were doing. So let's just take screenshots every other second and just see so that people can look what they were doing like 5 seconds ago. And well, it presents a lot of privacy issues. First of all, why would you want to take a screenshot of my screen every few seconds? That's really concerning. So I do a lot of things on my computer. Sometimes I go on my banking website. Sometimes I have private information on my screen. Government documents, my family's documents that I keep, for example. And I don't really want random screenshots to be taken while I have it on my screen. And all those my family photos, I don't really want that. I just want to have a bit more privacy. Why does Microsoft says that this is? I think this is a feature that people want. So even though right now it's opt-in, it's not impossible that in the future it might be a default setting that Microsoft thinks is mandatory on all systems. Although not every system can run it, that's basically a concern for the future. And they say that the images are stored on your local system, but Microsoft has a bad track record of regarding privacy anyway. Did you know that at one point, Microsoft just let the US government take a look at your OneDrive folders? Yeah, so OneDrive is a cloud storage system, right? And you can store anything you want on the cloud. So your family photos, your private documents, company information. And they just let the US government take a look at it because they are part of a mass surveillance program called PRISM. And yeah, I'm not even a US citizen. Why would they want to look at my folders? So just from Microsoft's track record of privacy is already a reason for me to distrust them with any information that I even don't want to share with them. And lastly, another issue that I have is Microsoft monopoly. Now, it's kind of obvious. Any system that you can buy nowadays is probably going to be shipped with Windows 11. And there doesn't seem to be any other option when looking at the seller's pages. You can choose your RAM, you can choose your storage, maybe you can choose a lot of stuff regarding your hardware, but it's almost always going to be shipped with Windows 11. This is because Microsoft effectively has a monopoly on the operating system market. So this happens because there isn't a real competition in the market. There's only Microsoft and a few other small companies that don't really get a name. And because of this, Microsoft can just do anything that they want. That's the real problem here. Because there's no competition, nobody is going to police them about the stuff that they do. Remember when I said when Microsoft 10 is effectively dead? Well, it's not actually dead because you can still get security updates for Windows 10. But the thing is, you have to pay every year to get those updates. Yes, they made a subscription model for Windows 10 security updates for people who cannot move to Windows 11 or choose not to. And the thing is, not everyone can just install Windows 11, especially people who are running on older system, because the hardware requirements for Windows 11 is somewhat high. It requires Intel 9th gen processors or newer, and also must have support for DirectX 12 graphics. And that's concerning because a lot of computers, they're still good. Computers from 10 years ago and all, they're still running pretty well. And some people just do not want to replace them or cannot replace them because maybe they're running it as a server, for example. Or maybe it's just their parents' computers and they have a lot of stuff on there that don't really know how to back it up. Older people in general are not really tech literate, so you can't just expect them to back this up, do all this, do all that, and then finally be able to update to Windows 11. And so it makes it hard for people who just want something that works, because if they don't if they cannot go to Windows 11, they have to stay on Windows 10. So they either have to be extra vigilant on the internet because they don't have any more security updates, or they have to pay for it, which just sucks in general. And Microsoft has admitted that they have monopoly in this market, and people just stick to them because, as I said in the picture above, that people stick with the Windows because there's a high cost to abandoning the investments that they have already made with the softwares that they have written. So basically, if you wanted to move to another operating system, you'll have to find alternatives to the softwares that you're using, or just rewrite them entirely, and that takes a lot of cost. Now, with all of these shortcomings that we have mentioned earlier, how about we look at some alternatives to Windows? Let's move that picture a little bit. And you can see that I have prepared a few alternatives for people who think maybe it is time to switch from Windows to something else. Well, first we have Mac OS. Well, Mac OS doesn't really need an introduction. It's somewhat popular. It is a stable system. It runs pretty good, and it is effective for people who focus on productivity or creativity. The downside is it's pretty expensive. So Mac OS typically comes with Mac systems, Apple systems, and for people who don't really use the Apple ecosystem, like iPhones or iPads and other stuff, it's not really a good investment because Apple products are very, very expensive. They are on the higher end of the market. So for people who just want something that works, or people who don't use the Apple ecosystem, this doesn't really sound like a pretty good option. And for the next alternative that we have is the one that's most exciting, is Linux. So Linux isn't really an operating system, it's more like a kernel. And basically what makes an operating system works. So for operating systems, we call them Linux distributions. There's a lot of Linux distributions out there, and honestly, it is pretty daunting to get into, mainly because there's so many options, and that it's ultimately kind of foreign, especially for people who have only used Windows in the past. So the most recommended Linux distributions out there are Linux Mint and Zorin OS, and they kind of work out of the box. There's not really a lot to learn to set it up, but ultimately it is a different experience than Windows, and that's what makes people a bit more nervous to switch from Windows. And lastly, we have Chrome OS. So Chrome OS is typically found on Chromebooks, and it is basically built upon Linux, but a slightly modified version of it, and it is very lightweight. And for most of the apps are going to be online, because it is designed with being an online operating system in mind, meaning there's not a lot of native apps being used. So like Microsoft Office, that kind of stuff will not be a native program to it. You will have to use alternatives like Google Docs and Google Spreadsheets and etc. And that is all for today. Well, that's my conclusion. There it is. And that is all for my speech today. So for my conclusion, Windows 10 is not a really great step forward for users. It may be a good step for Microsoft because they want to make more money, but for users, not so much. And because of that, users should have more autonomy when trying to choose what is best for their hardware. And we need to do this because we have to address the monopoly that Microsoft has in the tech industry, because we all have a choice. You know, we just have to make the right one and vote for it with our own actions. And thank you very much. That's all for me. Before I go, I want to say thank you to Ms. K for sticking with us for the entire SEM. Although you have a lot of issues with your family, thank you for entertaining us. And I pray for that your family and your institution in general goes for the better in the future. Thank you so much. That's all.